The gala was everything the tabloids had promised. Inside a towering glass hall glittering with chandeliers and polished silver, Los Angeles' elite mingled with champagne flutes in hand, their laughter echoing against the high ceilings. Flashbulbs from the red carpet still lit up the outside like a lightning storm, and designer gowns swept the marble floors like waves of silk. A-listers, legacy families, moguls, and their curated entourages crowded the room like constellations converging for one special night. But at the edge of it all, just outside the halo of attention, stood Scout Willis. She wore a simple but elegant navy dress, her long chestnut hair tucked behind one ear, eyes alert, smile hopeful. She had come not just as a guest, but as someone genuinely invested in the evening's cause, mental health awareness. The event was deeply personal to her. It was something she had spent years speaking about, living through, advocating for. Yet no one seemed to know or care. She had entered quietly, as always preferring to let her presence speak before her name did. But that approach wasn't working tonight. As one influencer after another was announced and cheered onto the stage, as old Hollywood friends clinked glasses and exchanged performative air kisses, Scout hovered near the edge of a crowd, feeling like an unwelcome echo. Someone brushed past her shoulder without apology. A group of young socialites, one of whom she vaguely recognized from a party years ago, paused for selfies right next to her, then moved on without acknowledgement. It wasn't that she expected red carpets to part or hosts to sing her name, but the way people didn't even seem to see her, it stung, more than she expected. Before we dive deeper into this emotional journey, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more powerful real-life stories that will move and inspire you. As she made her way toward the back of the hall, trying to find a quieter spot, she heard a voice near her shoulder. "Hey, sweetheart, could you grab another bottle of the 08 Merlot for table 3? Scout blinked, turning toward the tall man in a velvet jacket who barely glanced at her before tossing a white napkin over her arm. I'm not staff," she said softly. The man gave her a vague grunt and walked away, already scanning for someone else to fulfill his request. She stood still, cheeks flushing. She glanced at her reflection in a mirrored column beside the bar. Was she so unrecognizable, or just that easy to dismiss? Scout found a corner near the buffet where she could sit down. Her phone buzzed once, an automated news update, nothing personal. She thought of her parents, Bruce, with his gruff laugh and gentle eyes, who always said he hated these glitzy events, but would go to war for his daughters. Demi, radiant and composed, who taught her resilience could be quiet and soft-spoken. Tonight, Scout had come alone. She hadn't wanted to rely on her last name. She'd wanted to be heard on her own terms, but now she wasn't sure she'd even be seen. A familiar voice called out, an old music producer she'd met through her dad. Scout straightened in hope, lifting her hand. But the man walked past her without recognition, calling to someone else behind her. The moment cracked something open in her chest. She'd tried to step into the world on her own, and the world had turned away. Still, Scout didn't move. She sat with her hands folded on her lap, shoulders square, willing herself not to crumble. There had to be a reason she came tonight. There had to be a way to make it count. Scout sat silently in the corner, her fingers tracing the rim of her water glass. The laughter, the music, the flicker of gowns, it all seemed to blur. She tried to steady her breath. This wasn't the first time she'd felt invisible, but it was one of the hardest. A few minutes later, a publicist walked by, clipboard in hand, muttering into her earpiece. She paused briefly near Scout, her eyes scanning the room, then turned sharply. "Excuse me, could you move? We need this table for talent interviews," the woman said, gesturing briskly. "Thank you. Scout began, but the woman was already gone. That was it. She rose and walked slowly toward the restroom, not to cry. She refused to cry, but to breathe. In the mirror, she saw not just her reflection, but the weight of every time she'd been overshadowed by a name she didn't choose. Scout Willis. A name with both legacy and expectation. The daughter of two of the most recognizable faces in Hollywood. But who was she outside of that? She thought back to her childhood. There had been so much love, but also pressure. Expectations from strangers who thought they knew her, and judgments from those who thought she'd had it easy. Her parents had always tried to shelter her from that. But fame was like a spotlight that never quite turned off. And in that glare, it was easy to lose your shape. Growing up, she had battled anxiety quietly, her internal world often louder than the one outside. She'd journaled, written music and spoken in therapy more than at press events. Fame had never called to her, but purpose had. And the purpose that mattered most was mental health advocacy. She'd seen what silence did to people. She wanted to break that silence. That's why she was here tonight, or at least why she had been. Her phone buzzed again. A message from a small group chat with fellow advocates. Wishing you luck tonight, Scout. Can't wait to hear your speech. Her throat tightened. She had prepared a short talk. Nothing dramatic, just 5 minutes to share her story. It was supposed to be part of the Voices of Hope segment later that evening. She returned to the main hall, scanning the agenda posted beside the stage. Her name had been removed. In its place, a popular beauty influencer known for lip-sync videos and curated vulnerability. Scout blinked, confused. She walked over to the coordinator. "Hi, sorry, my name is Scout Willis. I was scheduled for the Voices of Hope segment. I think there's been a mistake." The woman looked at her, then back at the clipboard. "Oh, right, sorry about that. We had to make some adjustments. The sponsor requested someone with a bigger reach, nothing personal." Nothing personal. It echoed in her mind like an accusation. Scout nodded stiffly and stepped back. Her hands clenched so tightly she left crescent marks in her palms. Bigger reach, as if impact could be measured in likes. She moved toward the rear of the room again, where the lights were dimmer, her vision blurring. Somewhere in the distance, applause erupted as the replacement speaker took the stage. Scout could barely hear the words. Something inside her had cracked. Not anger, not jealousy, but something more fragile. Belief. Belief that the world would listen to truth if it wasn't shouted from a massive platform. She pulled out her phone and texted her parents. "Scout, I tried. They cut my speech. I think I'm just going to go." She stared at the message, thumb hovering over send. She hesitated, then tapped it. Moments later, it was delivered. She didn't expect a reply. She just wanted to disappear. The message had barely been sent when Scout tucked her phone back into her clutch. She didn't want to sit there waiting, hoping for a response. Not tonight. She stood slowly, brushing the creases from her dress, and began moving toward the exit, each step heavier than the last. No one stopped her. No one noticed, until a murmur stirred near the entrance. At first, she thought it was just another celebrity arrival, someone more relevant, someone glossy. But then the crowd turned slightly. A cluster of people parted, and there they were. Bruce Willis in a simple black suit, eyes sharp but kind, moving with purpose, and Demi Moore, a vision in ivory, calm yet unshakable. Scout froze. They had come. She hadn't told them where she was sitting, she hadn't expected anything, but somehow they were there, moving through the room like a quiet storm. No entourage, no flash, just them. Bruce's eyes met hers across the room. He gave the slightest nod. Demi reached her first, placing a warm hand on her daughter's cheek. "We saw your message," she said softly. Scout blinked rapidly. "You didn't have to come." Bruce stepped beside them. "Yeah, we did." And before she could object, before she could even process it, Bruce turned toward the stage. He walked straight up the steps, bypassing the confused host, and leaned into the microphone. "Excuse me, everyone," he said, voice calm but commanding. "Sorry to interrupt." The music stopped. Conversations paused mid-sentence. All eyes turned to him. "I'm Bruce Willis," he continued, "but that's not why I'm speaking. I'm here because someone important was just silenced in this room." Scout stood rooted, heart hammering. Demi stood by her side, her arm wrapped protectively around her daughter's shoulders. Bruce went on. "You all know me and my ex-wife, Demi. You've seen the films, read the headlines. But what you don't know, what you missed tonight, is the voice of our daughter, Scout Willis. She came here not for the spotlight, but to share something that matters. She had a speech, cut for metrics, removed for clicks. That's not acceptable. Not anymore." A rustle swept the room, some shocked, some embarrassed. The influencer who had taken Scout's spot looked down awkwardly. Demi stepped forward then, taking the mic gently from Bruce. "Our daughter isn't famous because of us. She's remarkable because she's honest, because she speaks for those who can't. We came tonight as her parents, but we're standing here now as witnesses. The world needs more people like her." A silence fell, raw, heavy. Scout felt her legs move, as if someone else were guiding them. She stepped toward the stage, her hands trembled. She hadn't prepared for this, not like this. But when Bruce offered her the mic, and Demi smiled that small, grounding smile, she knew what she had to do. Her voice quivered at first. "I didn't expect to speak tonight, and I didn't come here hoping to be famous. I came here because I've lived with anxiety since I was a child, because I know what it's like to feel invisible in rooms that should see you." The crowd leaned in. "I came because there are people out there, young and old, who believe that their pain isn't loud enough to matter. I came because mental health deserves more than filters and hashtags." She swallowed, steadying herself. "I was ignored tonight, but I'm speaking anyway." The room was quiet. And then, applause. Real applause. Not polite, not prompted. Genuine. For the first time that evening, Scout felt seen, not because of who her parents were, but because of what she said. The sound of applause rolled through the gala hall like a wave breaking against silence. Scout stood on the stage, bathed not in spotlight, but in something far more rare: authenticity. Her heart pounded, not from fear, but from the unmistakable energy of truth finding its place. She took a breath and continued, her voice gaining strength. "I've spent years wondering if I belonged anywhere," she said. "Not because of who my parents are, but because I've struggled to know who I am without them. Fame doesn't protect you from pain. If anything, it makes it harder to admit it exists." She glanced down at her hands, then back up at the sea of faces watching her. "I've been dismissed before, brushed aside because I didn't come with a blue checkmark or a viral moment. But I want to say this clearly. Your story matters, even if no one's filming it. Your healing matters, even if it isn't trending. You matter, even when no one claps." A quiet stillness spread across the room. It wasn't discomfort, it was reverence. Bruce and Demi stood just off stage, eyes locked on their daughter. Demi blinked back tears. Bruce's jaw tightened as he pressed a fist gently against his chest. They had seen her fight through shadows most people never knew about. They had seen her crawl back from despair, find her own light, and now finally stand in it. Scout finished her speech with quiet resolve. "I'm not asking for fame. I'm asking for compassion. I'm asking that we stop measuring people's worth by their followers and start listening to the stories that actually heal." And then she stepped back. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. Then the crowd rose, a standing ovation, not led by the MC, not choreographed. Just one person after another rising, clapping, not because they were supposed to, but because they needed to. Scout's chest tightened. For the first time, it wasn't about surviving the room. It was about commanding it. After the event, the shift was immediate. People approached her, not out of obligation, but with intent. One young actress said, "I've never heard anyone say what I've been afraid to." A producer asked if Scout would consider turning her words into a podcast. A non-profit CEO handed her a card. "You've got a platform, let's use it." But beyond the buzz, beyond the cards and promises, it was the messages that came pouring in that night that struck her most. Her Instagram inbox was flooded. "I've never cried in public until tonight, thank you. Your speech made me call my therapist again. I felt invisible for years. You gave me hope." The girl who had felt unseen was now being seen in the most human way possible, not as a headline or a celebrity kid, but as someone who told the truth out loud. Later that night, in the quiet of her apartment, Scout curled up on the couch with a cup of tea and scrolled through the hundreds of messages. She smiled, softly, for herself. This wasn't the moment she had planned, but it had become the moment she needed. She glanced over at her phone again. A group photo had been posted by a journalist from the event. Scout, flanked by her parents, all three smiling, not posing, but radiant with shared strength. The caption read, "Sometimes the bravest voice in the room is the one no one expected." And for the first time in a long time, Scout believed that voice could be hers. 6 months later, Scout Willis stepped onto a different stage, this time in Washington, D.C., beneath the vaulted ceilings of a mental health policy summit. The audience wasn't a red carpet crowd, but policymakers, advocates, educators, and survivors. And every one of them leaned in when she spoke. Her voice was clear, unwavering. "I used to think silence was strength," she told them. "Now I know that telling the truth, even when your voice shakes, is the real power." Since that unforgettable night at the gala, Scout had transformed her moment into a movement. With her parents' full support, she launched Seen and Strong, a foundation dedicated to mental health access for young adults, especially those struggling to be heard in overstimulated, over-curated worlds. The organization quickly gained momentum, not because of who backed it, but because of who it reached. Local schools invited her to speak. College campuses asked for workshops. Major networks ran specials about her work. She wasn't the daughter of Bruce and Demi in those stories. She was Scout, the advocate who refused to disappear. Bruce, now retired from acting, took on a quiet advisory role, helping behind the scenes. Demi, still radiant and fiercely intelligent, joined the board of directors, but they always deferred to their daughter when it came to direction and vision. This was her creation, her voice, her legacy. At the summit, as Scout left the podium to a warm applause, she found her parents waiting in the wings. Bruce clapped her gently on the back. Demi pulled her into a long embrace. "You didn't just find your voice," Demi whispered. "You gave it to others." That evening, back in her hotel room, Scout sat near the window, staring out at the lights dotting the city. Her phone buzzed with messages, more than she could read. But one stood out, a photo from the gala, now framed on her home desk, where it all had begun. She thought back to that moment, the humiliation, the loneliness, the choice to leave, and the decision to stay. She had stayed, and that had changed everything. Scout didn't chase visibility anymore. She created it, she offered it. And in return, she found something that all the applause in the world couldn't manufacture: peace. Her story was no longer about being overlooked. It was about choosing to be undeniable. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe for more real-life tales that inspire change, courage, and connection. And if you're ready for another unforgettable journey, click the video on your screen now to keep watching. There's so much more to feel.